bustling harbour of Bridlington has retained much of its character through the centuries. Built in 1173, it has sheltered a flourishing fishing industry, or slippery trade as it's called here. And 29 boats still trawl the North Sea in search of cod to satisfy the demand for the East Coast's renowned fish and chips. It's a colourful resort, award-winning blue flags and golden sands, the white cliffs of Flamborough Head and the green rolling wolds beyond. The resort is also characterised by a wide range of attractions and entertainments, making it ever popular for family holidays. But it's Bridlington's newfound association with water sports that brought us here for the 7th round of the Offshore Circuit Racing Powerboat Championships. Things got underway with a parade rather than a race, although the theme was certainly very appropriate. Offshore circuit racing represents the smallest of all powerboat racing categories and forms a combination of the seamanship involved in offshore racing and the multi-lap infighting normally associated with inshore circuit racing. OCR, as it's commonly called, is divided into 3 classes. Production Class A is up to 2000 cc. This includes the Mercury XR2 and the minimum boat length of 18 feet. Production Class B is up to 1800 cc. Normal engines being the Yamaha 140 or the Mercury 115. Minimum boat length 16 feet. Production Class C is up to 1300 cc, and engines in this class are either the Yamaha 90 or the Suzuki 85. Hulls must be standard production models of the ski boat type. They must comply with the rules and have a minimum production of 20 and be freely available to the general public. Safety rules are strict. Helmets, life jackets, jack plugs and flares are all compulsory. Each boat is scrutinised thoroughly before being allowed to race. The engines, like the hulls, are completely standard, although the propeller is a free choice. So most crews spend many hours practicing before selecting what they hope will be a winning combination. Good preparation and choice of props has made one man dominant in A-class for some time.
Nick Barsh, 5 times national champion. It must be getting harder to keep in front.
It's getting harder, yes. I mean, but of course, as you know, there's production boats and engines, so we don't have an edge on that anymore. And the standard of driving is getting so good now. This is why it's so competitive, and that's the beauty of it. So it is getting hard.
What does a champion do to keep the advantage?
It's a very good question. You just have to keep working out the little detail things. Propellers are free, of course. You can play with propellers. And I think today is going to be all about propellers. The conditions are in between. I'm not familiar with the area, so I'm not quite sure what's going to happen when the tide starts to run in. But I think we'll find ourselves on some legs wishing we had a different propeller to the one we actually got. So I think it's Hobson's choice today, and whoever chooses the right prop is going to have the edge.
But someone with a different propeller problem this weekend was Bob Baker of Dixon Scientific.
We arrived at 10 o'clock, hoping to just get kitted out prior to briefing. Opened up the back of the boat, and the propellers that we had in there last night were unfortunately nowhere to be seen. What to do?
And those propellers are important, of course. Do you carry spares?
They are very important. The spares were they, unfortunately. The others are at home this weekend. We only brought the 2 up, thinking that conditions would be suitable for them. However, very kindly, one of the other guys here has a spare propeller, and we've borrowed that for this weekend.
Now, you're 3rd in the championship at the moment. How's that going to affect your chances?
Well, we hope very little. It's a very similar propeller to the one that I lost, and the gentleman that lent it to me is actually lying 2nd, so I will endeavour to show him that his propeller is good.
Another young pretender of A-class is 23 years old Ian Blacker from Reading, who has been close to deposing the champion.
Because the man you're trying to beat is Nick Barsh, and he's very quick in the flat. Do you prefer rough conditions?
Well, I quite like all conditions really, but we seem to have the edge a little bit on the rough, so obviously the rough is going to be better for us.
In B-class, Dave Yeoman, driving a 19-foot Argo powered by a 140 horsepower Yamaha, has a 14-point lead. But with 14 points for the winner today, some had ideas about changing that.
Mark Greenaway, 2nd in the championship, but without a win. What are you going to do about it?
Well, hopefully we're going to go out there and win today. We finally got the boat running the way it should be. It's taken us a while. It's quite late into the season. But there's still enough races left for us to pull back and hopefully win the championship. But we'll find out today. It's our sort of conditions out there, and we're just going to go flat out and hopefully win today.
In C-Class, Martin Bull in the Yamaha-powered Phantom is 19 points ahead, but today sees the return of a former champion. Doug Kerr won the championship in 88 and 89, but has struggled since coming to grief in the Mersey.
Can you tell us about those accidents?
The accident, we hit a large plank of wood in the river, and the boat starts to suffer from cavitation. The cavitations on the bend caused me to lose the steering and hit the buoy really hard, subsequently hurting the co-driver. But the boat's never really got performed since then, but we think we've got it sorted out now, so let's see how things go today.
As the final preparations were made, the black clouds rolling off the wold sent shivers down the spines of most crews. It was certainly flat here, but further out it was getting very rough. It was all good news for the big crowd, most of whom had lined the harbour wall, although some, it appeared, preferred a more revolutionary grandstand. The course for the day was 15 3-mile laps, with a chicane near the beach to test the driver's skill and entertain the crowd. Then, right on time, the 20 boats competing in 3 different classes crossed the start line on the flat section of the course, and speeds quickly built up to 70 miles per hour. Champions Nick Barsh and Steve Kent in the red and white Samsung cameras were boxed in by the spray and wash of other boats, enabling Ian and Andrew Backer to get in front, but not for long. After a matter of seconds, their engine seized and their challenge evaporated, leaving Steve Harris in Scorpion Properties and Bob Baker in Dixon Scientific to lead the charge into the first lap. When they turned, the crews were to get a first taste of conditions they could expect for the next 50 miles or so, as the sea transformed into a foaming cauldron. At Mark 3 on lap 1, Steve Harris was a surprise leader in A-Class, but as he and the rest of the fleet turned, they hit the rolling swells of the North Sea, whipped up by a northwesterly wind. Each wave was like a ski ramp, tossing the boats into the air like corks. In B-Class, Mark Greenaway's bid for the lead in the table got off to a poor start. The yellow Phantom B20 appeared to be going well, but Dave Wilcock in B6 had already gone through. Bob Baker in the blue Phantom, Dixon Scientific, borrow prop or not, was showing an amazing turn of speed as he powered past Adam Butters in A78 Ebony. Baker has been runner-up in the championship for the last 3 years, and in any lesser company than Nick Barsh would surely have been champion. But you can't keep a good man down, and as they approached the chicane at the end of the first lap, it was Barsh who had come through the rough on top. The 18-foot Phantom, powered by an XR2 Mercury outboard, is perfectly balanced, and Barsh was demonstrating how to extract the maximum. But Baker was on his tail, pushing the champion all the way. On that borrowed prop, he was only 3 seconds behind, and by now, Barsh knew there was only one way to win, and that was going to be the hard way. Behind them in A-Class on lap 2, things were even closer. Robert McCarthy and Chris Lewis in Pacific Alliance, 3 seconds behind on lap 1, were now just 2 seconds ahead of A78 Ebony, Alan and Paul Butters. But Stan Dorian, number 98, 6 seconds adrift, but catching. By the halfway point, it really was developing into quite a battle, and there was all still to race for in A-Class. Barsh was still in front, but only by 8 seconds, with Baker still hanging on. Pete Bowen in Mersey Mouse Tours had moved up to 6, passing early leader Steve Harris on the way. In B-Class, leaders Dave Wilcock and Adrian Shepherd were showing why they were champions in 1991, while Mark Greenaway, now only 6 seconds down, was still searching for that first win of the season. In C-Class, Martin Bull and Chris Yeo, number 51, were teaching the old champion Doug Kerr a few new tricks. But Kerr wasn't tempted. He stayed patiently behind and waited. Join us after the break to see how he and the other challengers fared in the later stages here at Bridlington. Welcome back to Bridlington. We rejoin offshore circuit racing with just 2 laps to go. Very little had changed. The water certainly hadn't got any calmer, and few crews had given up hopes of victory. In A-Class, they were all still chasing the champion, Nick Barsh and Steve Kent in Samsung cameras. Utterly brilliant in their execution, they had spurned the advances of the pursuing pack and looked odds-on for a 6th win of the season. In B-Class, Dave Wilcock and Adrian Shepherd in B6 Interlink were continuing a good run. 2 victories in the last 2 races prior to this one had put them right back in contention, and they were stepping up the pace. In C-Class, Doug Kerr and daughter Sue still hadn't found a way past leaders Martin Bull and Chris Yeo in C51. Bull's 4 victories so far this season has put him in the driving seat. One more would virtually seal a championship victory. But back at the front and heading into the last lap, it was a final opportunity for Bob Baker to record his first win of the year. He had repeatedly crept up on Nick Bosch in the rougher sections, only to find the champion responding with contemptuous ease and then pulling away again. But the thought of finishing second yet again was adrenalising Baker, and he prepared for a final assault, come what may. Meanwhile, who would finish third was still a matter of even money. Butters and McCarthy had swapped places 6 times thus far, and there were still only 3 seconds between them, with Butters holding the advantage at the inside line. But McCarthy, like Baker up ahead in second place, was in no mood to succumb. And although the bigger boat was in front, he went into the last lap at full throttle and held on for dear life. For Dave Wilcock in B6 Interlink Express, things were decidedly better. He was well clear and went on to win comfortably. Mark Greenaway in B20 was also close, but not that close. He had slipped to third, with husband and wife team Gary and Andrew Archer filling second slot. Martin Bull duly clinched his 5th win of the season and moved on to 54 points, almost out of reach of the rest of C-Class. For Doug Kerr, it was a question of an improved performance, but more work seemed required before he's once again a serious challenge for the title. And for Ian Sanderson, it was a third and valuable points that keep him second overall this year. But back at the finish line, the amateurs and the experts alike awaited the outcome of Class A. Had Baker achieved the seemingly impossible, or had the champion reigned supreme? It didn't take long for that particular question to be answered, as the red and white Phantom streaked across the finish line at almost 80 miles an hour. Arms raised triumphantly, Bosch and Kent had done it again. 6 wins and 6 races in the year. They will almost certainly win their 6th championship. And so, to the applause of an enthusiastic and approving Bridlington crowd, the champions took to the podium for their laurels. But as they celebrated, there was drama in the second event of the day. Graham Wood's air entrapment hull nearest the camera was to crash at great speed. Although conditions were ideal on the seafront, further out it was still rough, and it was here that Wood came to grief. The race was eventually won by Phil Greer in D50 Equalizer, but for Wood and his co-driver Chris Lewis, it was a lucky escape. As they came ashore, both crew appeared to have escaped serious injury. But Wood, seen here on the right, was subsequently admitted into intensive care after collapsing. The sight of the wrecked hull bore witness to the speed of the crash and served as a reminder that but for the efficiency of the safety and rescue network, the outcome could have been very different indeed. At least the crew was safe. But at the end of the day, the celebrations continued as Bridlington honoured its very first powerboat champions. And we'll be bringing you more action from the championships as the season reaches its climax. But for now, the results of the 7th round. Now we move